So by now we know that digital technologies change everything. We define digital technologies as cloud technologies, collaboration technologies, big data, Internet of Things, and mobile technologies. Obviously there are others, but this is the key cluster. We know that they change how enterprises run. We also know that they change competitive dynamics. So we know that when digital works, it works really strongly. We also know that volatility of competitive situations these days is much stronger than in the past. If you look at the Standard & Poor's 500, we know that at the current rate of change, about 70% of those companies won't be there within 10 years. So something is really happening, and therefore when digital works, it works really strongly. The challenge with the usage of digital in companies that are established and have large market shares and large operations is that they have very large legacy systems and processes. And indeed we see that through the numbers. If you look at analysis that has been done recently, you see that, for example, ERP deployments, a previous type of technology that by now has been implemented for about 30 years, still runs into cost and delay overruns above 50% routinely. We also know that, for example, for every $100 of IT project expenditure out there, about 70 go into projects that are not fully satisfactory for one reason or another. The reason why getting technology right is so hard for large companies is that they have a lot of legacy, as I said, and the ability to run cross-functional teams and get those projects governed in time and aligned to the business objectives that were created at the beginning is actually not easy. Many of them are not capacitized to do that, and many of them simply have not they don't have the capabilities to get that right. So the reality is that even if the examples I've cited before are related to technologies of the past, we do think that for digital technologies, especially because digital technologies require end-to-end cooperation between many teams, the situation is going to be very similar in this case.
Practical solutions exist. Let me explain with an example. If I take a retail financial services product, take, for example, origination of a loan. So a client asking for a loan, could be a mortgage, or a claim, an insurance claim. What most often happens is that the user interface, the last mile, based on web technologies these days, very often mobile technologies, and also application of big data to that layer of the interaction, which is the user interface, is what gets the most investment and certainly the most attention. However, a lot of the discomfort that the users might feel and a lot of the subdued performance of that interaction is very often not originated at the front end, but very often originates in what is called the middle office, where the sanctioning of the decisions that the financial institution will make vis-a-vis that specific interaction happen. And also the back end, where all this data around that client are stored and all the data around that transaction are stored. And the problem is that very often the focus is on the front end, but to solve the problem in a cost-effective way, companies should actually look at the interaction, the interplay between front, middle, and back office. The other part of the solution in Lean Digital is to look at processes, not just technologies. The focus on processes will help decide which interventions are really needed and really align with the business outcome, as opposed to quote-unquote obsessing with digital-only solutions that very often focus only on the front office. A Lean Digital approach rests on three levers, three sources of value. First of all, obviously digital technologies. There are technologies that are agile and malleable enough that can be adapted over time. The second lever is what we call human-centered design, derived from design thinking, that fundamentally is there to ensure that the engineering left brain kind of approach that typically we would have in those situations is compounded with an approach that looks at what the real sources of value are for the end client. And the third part of the approach is the usage of agile lean principles. Lean principles that have been somehow used in a classic way for many years, that unfortunately have been used in the past in some cases with a very tactical objective. But when we look at lean practices and what lean principles can do in an environment like the one that we just talked about, they certainly have the power to streamline the interventions and govern and align any effort to the final business outcome that is supposed to be achieved.